Hello and welcome to the Office Field Guide. In today's edition, we are looking at Season 3, Episode 2, entitled The Convention. The setup for this one is that Michael and Dwight meet up with Jim and Josh at a regional paper convention in Philly. Meanwhile, Pam goes on her first date after breaking up with Roy. Man, when I say that out loud, it sounds like such a boring episode, but this is one of my low-key favorite episodes. But we'll get into that. This one was written by Gene Stupinski and Lee Eisenberg, or as I've begun to call them, Stupenberg, and it was directed by Ken Winningham. And as for Stupenberg, I recently found out that these two writers are actually reoccurring characters on The Office. And maybe this is common knowledge, but I had no idea. Gene Stupinski plays Gino, and Lee Eisenberg plays Leo. Who's Gino and Leo? That's what I asked when user, the Star Wars guy, commented on my top 10 supporting characters video. When I looked them up, I realized that they were these guys.
So what are you doing for Valentine's Day?
They're the Capri salad-eating Vance refrigeration workers. I had no idea, so thanks Star Wars guy for the hot lead. I still don't think they necessarily belong in my top 10 list, but I do have a better visualization to show when I invoke Stupenberg. Alright, so back to this episode. The convention aired on September 26, 2006, and it was viewed by 7.8 million people. With the ratings staying strong after shaking things up at the premiere, I'm sure NBC was confident that The Office was going to be here to stay. Alright, with that, your Office trivia for today is, let's make it easy. This is the first episode that Dwight calls Angela a nickname. What is that nickname that lasts for the entire series? Stay to the end for the answer to that one. And with that, let's get checked in. Get it? Because it's a convention? Alright, cue the transition.
No one asked you anything ever?
That has been the longest intro in a long time. I'm glad you're still with me. There's a lot of stuff to dig in for this one. First, and probably what blew my mind the most in researching this episode, is that in an interview, Greg Daniels talked about a plot line that was originally conceived for this season, was set to kick off in this episode, and it had to do with this sequence with Dwight and Angela.
Don't be mad, it is a business trip.
But I don't understand, it's for managers.
I am an ARM, Assistant Regional Manager.
I know.
Originally in the script, Angela was going to say, "I'm late," right before she storms out of the room, implying that she may be pregnant. Daniels opted to cut this plot line from the season, stating, "It was a big move, but we had it in a show that had a lot of other big moves. You don't introduce a C plot line of an illicit office romance, and then all of a sudden have one of those characters get knocked up." And I have to agree that making that decision would have led to a lot of downstream considerations, and without that pregnancy, we have Angela getting upset with Dwight for little to no reason, which just makes this secret conversation the best. Another interesting note from Daniels on this episode was that it was originally going to include some of the cast from the original British Office, including Mackenzie Cook, Martin Freeman, and Lucy Davis. They were going to appear at the convention, but unfortunately the scheduling just didn't work out with the guest stars, and it had to be scrapped. And for the last production note, this episode had a ton of deleted content. I'm not going to talk about them all, but check them out however you can. One of the things I love about this episode is all the hidden goodies in this one, so here's a rapid fire list of some of the hidden goodies. First, this clip is funny.
Ugh, that town smells like cheesesteaks.
But it kind of adds to it knowing that Kate Flannery is actually from Philly. This is the first episode Oscar's missing from The Office during his 3-month paid vacation. Dwight, being Dwight, altered his convention name tag. He inserted his middle name, crossed out the "to the" from the assistant to the regional manager, and added his cell phone number, home phone number, pager number, and his hotel room number. And while the foreground of this conversation is awesome,
I'm still dating her, so nothing can happen between us at the convention.
Step away from me, Michael.
you can see Dwight diligently studying the fire escape routes. And having watched this episode so many times now,
Yes!
Well,
I can't believe I never noticed how long Dwight is left hanging for this high five.
I underestimated you.
Yeah, well, maybe next time you will estimate me.
According to Angela Kinsey, this bit
why are there flies in here?
was completely improvised on the spot, and I love it. And this might just be coincidence, but when Kelly comes over to talk to Pam about their double date, Ryan seems to be in quite the hurry to make this phone call. And the last hidden goodie is about this line.
Freedom fries. Yeah.
I'm going to assume that if you're younger than me, you don't quite get the reference here, but France opposed the US war in Iraq, and in retaliation, a small and stupid grassroots movement was started to change French fries to freedom fries. What's so awkward about this interaction between Pam and this guy is that this whole Freedom Fries thing was completely outdated a few years before this episode even aired. So, no, guy, you're not being edgy.
People always say, like, don't be edgy, but I don't know. I don't know any other way. Yeah, you get it.
And honestly, we could have a whole round of I Think You Mean here, but we'll save that game for an episode that didn't have so many background things going on. So with that, let's just dive into the deeper meaning.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
So I lied earlier. I did notice one more production tidbit, and it fit nicely into my first point for the thesis of this episode. I always thought that it was interesting that the convention episode was the second episode of season 3. It struck me as odd because we haven't squarely established Jim in the Stanford office with much depth at all. And we really haven't seen what Jim's absence from the Scranton branch has impacted, other than longing looks from Pam. Then I noticed the production code for this episode was 3006, which I thought was odd because the 3 clearly indicates the 3rd season, and I believe there's a 3-digit number for each episode. 006 would indicate that it was the 6th episode of the season. So it seems like the convention was originally planned, written, and shot to be the 6th episode of the season, meaning the coop, grief counseling, initiation, and even Diwali were meant to precede this episode. And I couldn't find anything specifically calling out why they rearranged these episodes, so I'll speculate as it does have something to do with my point here. Conventions are places to forge new relationships, reconnecting with existing ones, and to think towards your future. But with all that good stuff comes the awkwardness of being out of your normal day-to-day elements. Presenting both Jim and Pam in these awkward, out-of-their-norm situations, Stupenberg uses this awkwardness to explore how these characters react to being forced to move on. Jim admitting out loud, early in this season now, why he left Scranton, leaves us with knowing that this character is desperate to fit in and is desperate to move on.
I transferred because of Pam.
Jim isn't this much of a kiss-up, but it is interesting that he's sporting the same style as Josh in this awkward introduction scene.
So what kind of commissions you get up there?
Oh, Dwight, I missed you so much.
Indicating that he's doing his best to move on and fit in with the new group. We see in the cue that he's clearly a fish out of water. Meanwhile, Pam is equally a fish out of water on this date, and she even ends with saying,
I went on a date. It wasn't a love connection. I think when I like someone again, I'll just kind of know.
So I 100% agree with moving this episode up in the release order, as it does a great job of further establishing where these characters are. Both of them begin to dive harder into their jobs.
Did I wake up this morning thinking I'd be throwing together a bird funeral? You never can tell what your day here is going to turn into.
I started biking to work. Josh does it, and he lives a lot farther away than I do.
And kindle some romance individually.
There's nothing wrong with your car. Just thought you might want a break from the grief counseling session.
Oh, I would like a break.
Or I don't know, maybe this whole episode exists to hinge around the amazing weirdness of Creed Bratton.
There's my girl. Noticed you handing out some shekels. How would one get on that train? Andrea's the office bitch. You'll get used to her. Creed.
But with that, let's dish out some Dundies.
And then I gotta get him to the Dundies.
All right, the awkward Dundee goes to Michael Scott.
I love inside jokes. Love to be a part of one someday.
I love that line so much. And the Girls Gone Wild Dundee goes to Michael Scott. That's right, Michael gets 2 Dundies in this episode. Michael's sitting in his room alone with the strobe light. This is the kind of cringe The Office is made of.
Whoa. What are all those stains?
Blood, urine, or semen.
Oh, God, I hope it's urine.
And let's rate this thing.
What gives you the right?
All right, so the answer to the trivia question first. The nickname that Dwight calls Angela in this episode is...
But I don't understand. It's for managers.
Monkey, I am an ARM, Assistant Regional Manager.
I know.
Monkey, Monkey is the nickname, and for all their weirdness, this is such a cute nickname. Okay, and so to the ratings. Let's rate this cold opening. There is something genius and simple and subtle about this cold opening, and I think it revolves around this joke.
You know, she also said the waiting list is like 8 months.
8 months?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want a baby in 8 months.
Probably won't.
But this cold opening does feel out of place in the episode itself, and it does make it feel slightly disjointed. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. As for this episode itself, I love this one. I don't know if it's just because I love attending conferences.
Swag! Stuff we all get. I basically decorated my condo for free with all of my swag!
Or if it's all the hidden goodies in this one, or the subtle ways that you know that Jim and Pam are just one episode closer to getting together.
Dwight got a hooker. Oh my God, I gotta call somebody. I don't even know who to call.
And as for an episode that was shot on location, though truthfully I don't really know where this was shot, the establishing shot is of the Philly Convention Center, but I don't really know where they did the internal shots. Regardless, for them not being in the office, I think they nailed it with this one. It all works together very well, 4 out of 5. But that's just what I think about the convention. What are your thoughts? What do you like? What do you dislike? Think I missed something? Leave it in the comments. Consider sharing this channel with a fellow office addict. Subscribe yourself if you haven't. Next week we're going to be looking at The Coup. I love that episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.